Welcome to the Wise Wisconsin Spring Series, sponsored by the UW-Madison Division of Extension's Lifespan Program. And the third session in our series, Decluttering, What Do I Do with All My Stuff? And welcome, I'm Jane Jensen, Lifespan Educator with Extension in Sheboygan County. And I will have my co-presenters introduce themselves, please.
Hello, I'm Ruth Schriefer, and I'm also an extension educator, and I'm located in Iowa County.
And I'm Karen Dickrell, lifespan educator in Outagamie County.
So today we're talking about decluttering. What do I do with all my stuff? So we live with it, we walk around it, we may have drawers, cupboards, garages, basements filled with lots of stuff. So join us as we present a self-starter on how to begin to deal with the stuff in our lives. We'll talk about getting started with the process, looking at important documents, what to keep, what to shred. We'll look at different ways to distribute the transfer of non-titled property. And just remember, one size does not fit all, but hopefully you'll discover some ways to get started. Next, please. So does this look like anyone's storage space, garage, basement? And when you think about stuff, so what is stuff? And I looked it up in Webster's dictionary, and a few things I pulled out, they define it as substance, essence, unspecified material, belongings, worthless material. So you can just pause for a minute if you'd like. And what do you think of when you hear the word stuff? And we'll go to the next slide to Ruth.
Some of the stuff we need to declutter is paper. I put paper in all caps and bolds. Paper. Are you swimming in it? Do you have files or piles that need to be reviewed or filed or shredded? Do you ask yourself what to keep, where to keep it, or how long to keep it? Important papers include family, property, financial, and legal papers that legitimize and protect your family, yourself, as well as your estate. Important papers document your identity, ownership, legal and financial status, employment, education, and family history. It's hard not to feel overwhelmed. So take a look at this list. These are the important papers that are important to keep. What I'm going to ask you is to pause, just click pause on this video recording and take a look at this list and think about all of the papers that you feel really good about, like I've got these under control. So hit pause and take a real close look at this list and hit play when you're ready to resume the video. Welcome back. So now that you've identified some of these papers that you feel good about, like got it under control, I'm going to ask you to hit pause one more time. And I hope you've got a pen and some paper handy, because I'd like you to take the next couple of seconds or minutes and make a list of the things that it's like, oh, I really should figure that out, figure out where it is, figure out where it should be stored, get a handle on that. So once again, hit pause, make a list of the papers that you need to get find and take track of, take responsibility for, and then rejoin us when you've got your list made. Hi again. We know that keeping a list of your important household papers can save you lots of time and lots of frustration. It gives you peace of mind if you know that you can find these papers that you might need if there's an emergency or if you need to access them quickly. A best practice is to actually have a copy of the complete list of where your papers are stored in a location outside your home, maybe with a close friend or family member. It's also important to double check that list periodically in case you do make some changes or things happen with your personal or financial or legal records. How often should you review this list after you have all those papers compiled? We're teaching an aging mastery program through Extension right now, and the aging mastery program suggests that you review your papers at least any time if any of the 5 Ds occur. And those 5 Ds are when you reach a new decade, if there's a death, if there's a divorce, if there's a new diagnosis, or if there's a change in a change or a decline in your health. Those are the really important times to check your records and make sure that all your papers are up to date. If you're interested in more information from this presentation, personal-finance.extension.org has even more information on the details of these important papers and what to keep. So the next big question often is where to keep your papers. Take a look at those 3 columns. Driver's license, personal ID, credit cards, bank statements, bills to pay, birth certificates, and wills. Do they all belong in the same place? Or are you thinking, maybe 3 separate places? Let's take a closer look. For your wallet or your purse, it's important to carry your driver's license or your personal ID, frequently used credit cards, health insurance or Medicaid information, blood type and organ donor information, and any medical information or contact information for a family physician. This is information that no matter where you are, you're going to need this, or somebody would be looking for it. Quick and easy access. Another category of where to keep your important papers is your home files. And you can actually break this into different categories, or you could leave them all together. But your home files should include your bank and credit union statements, any bills to pay, any paid bills, your medical information. Those specific categories are called current files, something that you might need on a more regular basis and has date-sensitive information. The next set of home files could be called permanent files, information you want to keep because it's important, but you don't need to look at it every day. Things like your education records, employment records, household inventory, if you keep one of those, which is a very good thing to have, and a record of important papers. There's a third type of home files, and we actually call it the dead storage. And that might be things that important to keep, yes, but you really don't have to look at it very often. It might be like past income tax records. And think about keeping those in the attic or the basement or someplace else that they're not cluttering your home or taking up frequently used space, but certainly available if you happen to need them. And then finally, in where to keep your important papers, we have that third column. Birth certificates, wills, real estate deeds, the record of important papers and backup copies of important papers really do belong in a safe deposit box or a home safe, just someplace where they're going to stay intact and accessible when needed, but not something that you need to look at frequently. Finally, how long to keep those important papers? Some we need to keep indefinitely, some for several years, sometimes just for a year, and sometimes just for a few days. Let's take a look at those lists. The indefinite list: birth, marriage, death, adoption, military discharge, naturalization papers. Hang on to them. And those are the kinds of copies that might, if you're looking at the where to keep them, that might be in the safe deposit box or the home safe. Documents that you might need to keep for many years: tax returns with the related documentation, a car title until it's sold, transferred, or discarded, a mortgage contract and receipts for improvements on the home until the mortgage is paid in full and the house is sold. And then deeds until property is sold or transferred. So these are kinds of things that you'd probably want to keep in your home files, accessible so that when changes occur, you know where the paperwork is. Things that you're going to keep for a year, like your household budget, if you're monitoring that, bank and credit union statements, home and auto insurance policies until they expire or until you have new policies in place. Just hang on to those documents. And finally, the temporary documents. Credit card receipts until you're sure you've got the credit cards matched or the statements matched with the bills that you've been saving. Billings until paid in full, and then you can discard those items. When you're thinking about discarding, make sure that a shredder is your best friend. I'm going to turn it over to Jane.
Well, we've heard about these two terms, titled and non-titled property. And the titled property ownership are things like the real estate, savings and checking, your motor vehicles, which have a title, your machinery, your stocks and bonds, and of course, only in Wisconsin, Green Bay Packer tickets. And these are most of the things that people have already planned for. And then we'll go next. And the non-titled property ownership, those are those non-titled property items, and it means that the owner is not identified with a written document. And you can see some pictures of those things. And the Pyrex stuff I look at with fondness as I lived in New York State near Corning for quite a period of time. So those are very common. So next, please. And keeping in mind that these decisions about both the titled and the non-titled property, those decisions are both very important, and reminding us how important it is to take the time to talk about these things as a family. And I would ask you to just think about how many of you have ever had a family meeting. I know we had quite a few in my family. And when you think about that family meeting to talk about these things, we advise that you have an agenda that outlines the points so that you stick to the point. Why are you having the meeting? And be sure to rehearse it or practice it, even in that bathroom mirror, and choose a time when everyone in your family can give it their full attention. And then thinking about those good communication pieces, those I statements. And really thinking about, taking the time to tell those stories, because remember, not everyone has the same memories or the perception of items. You may have siblings that have wide age ranges. And again, it's really interesting to note that many of us have made decisions about our titled property, and yet we haven't had discussions about the non-titled property, which often has the most emotion, etc., and those memories for people. But reminding you, you have a choice, doing it now when you are alive, or letting it go for others to take care of after you're gone. It's really your preference. And then we'll move ahead. And just reminding us that the non-titled property includes those things, like the things listed on the slide, the guns, the tools, the furniture, and the photos, and all the books and printed things, and those beautiful dishes and jewelry, and all those collections, Hummels and Swarovski crystal. And you may want to pause and just talk about what some of those non-titled things might be. And I'm going to share some of those with you now. This is my Norwegian troll, right from Norway. So this is my troll, and my mother's ancestors came from Norway. My grandma was named Olga, and she was from Pigeon Falls, Wisconsin, and her last name was Jarsted. So if that gives you any idea how Norwegian they were. And my other piece, he's a little heavier, so I kind of have him with both hands. So this is my Danish Viking, and he's a little more comical looking than I think the original Vikings. I think they were kind of nasty characters, but the Vikings are Danish. So we just need to keep that in mind. So never the twain shall meet. You know, the troll is Norwegian, you know, and the Viking is Danish. So keep that in mind. And just thinking about the importance again and the preciousness of that non-titled property, because these two pieces mean an awful lot to me. So I'll just move forward, please. And then thinking about those non-titled property decisions, and those meanings really differ for people. And I have one more thing to show, is that when my siblings and I were looking at my parents' stuff, and no one else wanted my dad's school bell, which he got in the auction. And this was the bell that the teacher in the one-room schoolhouse, I won't shake it because it's too loud, but that's how they'd call everybody into school. And I always remember my dad telling the stories about him coming in early, getting the fire started in the little stove. And not that anybody else thought it was trash, but I was the one that thought it was most important. And just remembering that there are so many emotions often involved, and again, reminding us that there are often more emotions with the non-titled property, and that these belongings, just like for me and my dad's school bell, they have different meanings for different people. And it's often impossible to divide things fairly. You know, there's value in money, or is there more value in the emotions? And perceptions of what is fair is really going to differ. And that will really vary from the children to the grandchildren to the in-laws to others. And even my parents had a really nice Howard Miller grandfather clock. Well, my sister-in-law already has a grandfather clock coming from her parents. So we made the decision to sell it because the rest of us didn't have room in our home for this beautiful Howard Miller, but a grandfather clock. And then thinking about that these are sometimes difficult issues because they involve us facing those issues of death, you know, facing someone's loss, or the grief after losing someone. And there's a really interesting story in our Grandma's Yellow Pie Plate, which Karen will talk a little bit more about, some materials that we've used from the University of Minnesota dealing with non-titled property. And there it is, who gets Grandma's Yellow Pie Plate. And there was a story about a man who had been collecting stamps, and he was extremely proud of his stamp collection. And he was just so certain that his children and grandchildren would want his stamp collection. Well, no, not so much. But he knew that he could sell that stamp collection for about $10,000. So an important decision to make, you know, even as I go back to my parents' beautiful, you know, Howard Miller grandfather clock. So we'll go to the next slide. And reminding us that everyone has property to transfer, all sorts of stuff to declutter. And some people consider it treasure. Others may consider it trash, or maybe not necessarily trash, but it's not something that's going to work for their home. They don't need it. So it's really a matter of perspective, and then realizing what's really most important in the end, which is keeping those family relationships, which is super important. And I will just tell my little decluttering story. And I have one more last show and tell item. And for those of you who don't know, this is beeswax from a honeybee hive. And my late husband, he did beekeeping, honey beekeeping in the city of Sheboygan, which you can do backyard bees. We asked about it, that was fine. Asked the neighbors, everybody was fine. And so this is something I keep on a little side table. It makes me smile. about those honeybees. And a couple of weeks ago, one of my late husband's beekeeper buddies came over, and he's mentoring some new and up and coming beekeepers. So he collected, he collected the hives, the supers, the suit, the veil, the smoker, I don't know, some stuff I didn't even know what it was, like the mite killing device. And he loaded it up. He's going to inventory everything. And those wonderful items are going to go to new beekeepers as their new bee packages come in now in the spring. So wonderful thing to declutter from the garage and the basement. And I still have 90 pounds of honey. So those will continue to be gifts to family and friends. So we'll go to the next slide. And Karen has some stories to tell.
And those are wonderful stories that you're sharing. I think Jane and Ruth have stories of things, of remembrances of what they've done and haven't done, and what's worked for them and their families. So the stories, I've been teaching this class, and yes, as Jane mentioned, this comes from the University of Minnesota. Who Gets Grandma's Yellow Pie Plate? Right now it's out of print, but you can go to their website and you can still see the information, and they have a video that you can watch as well. And those stories are so powerful as we think about our families and moving forward. And that's why for some of us to get rid of our stuff is very emotional. But there's some fun stories that go along with it. So one is the rocker. And that's a personal story for me. Grew up on a farm, Sheboygan County, and our outside sheds had all kinds of old furniture. And my dad found a wicker seat rocking chair that was way up in the attic of one of the sheds. And he brought it down. And when the farm was sold, that chair went to town with him. He refinished it. He found someone that could do the wicker seat. And, some people use an exercise bike to hang their clothes on. Well, no, Dad used that wicker chair in the bedroom that he used for where he put stuff. He hung his shirt on there every night. And different things. But anyway, it was a special memory, and I still remember exactly where it was in the corner of the bedroom in New Holstein. Well, anyway, when he passed on, the chair was still in question. So, and actually the chair went with Dad when he went to assisted living, and it was part of his room when he was at assisted living because that was something that was important to him. But when he passed on, it was like everybody looking at everyone else, who's going to get the chair? And no one really wanted it, but I didn't want to lose it because my grandfather's name was Jacob and my dad's name was George. So I called it the Jacob George rocking chair. And I told my nephew, the youngest grandson, whose name is Jacob George, that the chair is his when he gets a job in a nice place to live. Right now, he just graduated, he's looking for a job, so he doesn't have roots yet. But when he gets roots, that rocking chair is going to leave my living room and it's going to go to Jacob George. And it's just a neat piece of heirloom. And he was so young when all this other stuff happened with the stuff of my parents, his grandparents, that he didn't get much. And I don't think he really wants much. That's some of the stuff that we deal with too, is not all family members are real receptive to it. But he does know about the rocking chair and he'll be getting it. Another story is, when I do the program, oftentimes people will share their stories with me. And one was a woman who had a poker table that her husband played at, and he played poker every couple of weeks with some friends. And, she really didn't enjoy it because they'd smoke their cigars and she'd have to make sandwiches and serve beverages. And it didn't bring happy memories after he had passed on, but she didn't know what to do with the poker table. So one time they were with the whole family and she just said, is anyone interested in Grandpa's poker table? And, surprisingly, she said 3 of her grandchildren were excited about this poker table. And then she thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Who am I going to give it to now that there's 3 of them? So you know what she did? She played poker with her grandkids and the winner took all. So it was a fun family activity. and the winner got the poker table and shared it with the rest of the family too. So there's all kinds of different stories. This, I don't know if everybody can see it. It's a potato ricer. And sometimes I use this in a lot of different classes for a lot of different reasons. But I didn't get my grandma's potato ricer. My cousin did, Mike. And I knew he got it because he called up another cousin and said, now, when you make those potatoes, do you cook them first or do you put them in raw? So he knew it made riced potatoes eventually. He just didn't know how to get there with it. So sometimes we have things that we have and we don't know maybe the real use of it. Another fun thing that I have is this pencil sharpener. And when my niece saw it, she said, what is that? And I said, it's a pencil sharpener, see? And it's even one of those handy dandy ones that it can be, you change the size of it. So depending on the thickness of the pencil, and it has sections, so it's gonna keep flat. But anyway, she said, well, where's the cord? She had never seen a pencil sharpener like this. She only was aware of electric pencil sharpeners. I think she was joking, and then I wasn't sure if she was or not. So I don't know, but there are things in life that, sometimes people don't know what something is and why would they want to keep it. So it's important to have a sense of humor and to kind of think about what's most important. So as we look at the next slide, this gives you the many different options of what to do with all your stuff and to consider your distribution. So if we had more time, if we were in person, we'd probably offer this class with an attorney to talk about, if we're going to do any kind of in-depth who gets grandma's yellow pie plate, so that they can talk about the legalities of what goes into a will. And it's really important that you check things out ahead of time, so you just don't assume, well, I don't need to know that. Can we go back to the other slide? Thanks. So the wills are important and to work with an attorney. But what you can do is a list. And the list, it's really important. And I don't know if you want to put everything in your house. I wouldn't recommend that. I mean, some people are really diligent and do a lot of work. But maybe it's just the top 10 things. Maybe it is the grandfather's clock. Maybe it is a set of china. Maybe it's a saw. Who knows what it is. But you make a list of things, and then who you want it to go to, who you want to gift it to. And then you date it. And it'd be a good idea to have someone witness it and they date it as well. So, and that can be placed with your will if you want, and you can update it. So just make sure you're always dating it, because it's the most recent date that's going to have the most value, because sometimes we change our minds and people come and go and flow in and out of our lives. So the list is one wonderful way to do it. You can gift things, and that is a wonderful way too. And if you're gifting something, it's always helpful to give the story of where did this come from. One woman talked about at Christmas time, and this wasn't in the pandemic, this was before the pandemic, but she went shopping at home. She went through her house and found gifts for all of her children and her grandchildren. And then before she wrapped it, she wrote a little story about each item and why she was gifting it to that particular person. She said that was the most memorable Christmas she'll remember for a lifetime, because everybody was like, oh, what did you get? What did you get? And no one said, I don't want this. And that's what they were thinking. But the story that went along with it, she said it took forever for us to unwrap those Christmas gifts, because then people had different memories of things too. And one of the stories that went along with it was she gave a set of 5 glasses, like beverage glasses, to her daughter, and had wrapped them up, and said that this was a wedding gift. And in the story, she said, I thought I got 6 when I got it as a gift, but there's only 5 here. I don't know what happened to the 6th glass. And the daughter started to cry. And the daughter said, Mom, I broke it. And I was afraid to tell you because I knew you loved those glasses. So every time, whenever I came, I'd rearrange it so it looked like there were 6 glasses in the cupboard. But I broke that glass. True confession. And it was like years after that glass had been broken. But, you know, it was a gift. And ironically, mom gave it to her because she thought she was always looking at those glasses and admiring them. And she was just maybe kind of trying to hide that there was a sixth one missing. So gifts are important. You can promise to others, but if you're promising, make sure you only promise to one, or make sure that it matches your list, because sometimes people will forget, or they'll say, oh yeah, you get that. And then, oh yeah, you'll get it. And then it's like, oh, I forgot. Which one did I say I was going to give it to? So put it on the list. You can label things with, you know, the blue tape or the masking tape. But one of the cautions with labeling is that those labels, those masking tape things can come on. So again, put it on the list and then people will know which bookcase you're talking about or who. You can have a private auction. Many people do that. And that may be just for certain people that are invited. You can have garage sale, yard sales. You can have estate sales. There are people that will organize this for you. Different parts of the state of Wisconsin, I know there's different kinds of vendors out there that's their expertise. They go into a house and they stage it and they set things up and they price things. So, you know, they're the estate sales. You can also have a silent auction in your family. And that works too, where you might have little bids of how much people want to pay for certain things. Some people have used monopoly money, so you each get X amount of dollars, and then you put the money down for whatever it is that you're buying. Another concept that's on this slide here is just to throw it away, and that's hard for many people to do. But as we've been doing these programs, we're hearing more and more that second and third generation folks don't want the stuff. And so it's your option to decide, are you going to keep it and let someone else decide after you've passed on? Or are you going to throw it away and take care of things as much as you can? You can recycle. Again, know what your county will accept and what you can use in other ways. Can be reused by other people. Amazing, in Appleton, where I'm based, if you put things out on the curb, people will come and pick it up. It's amazing. So that's one way to do it. I know there's different computer apps and different sites that people will list things for free or for low cost amounts. So, you know, if you have the time to put things on a site and to sell them or to sell them through eBay. One woman sold 200 roosters on eBay. I think it was her mother-in-law had collected roosters, 200 roosters. So sold them that way. Pilfer, someone asked me, well, what is pilfering? Well, that's stealing. And sometimes that happens with people that, you know, may come to visit. It could be family members, and unfortunately, you know, they'll just take advantage of people, and that's not a good thing. And again, that donating of giving to someone else. When my parents moved into assisted living, we found this deck of cards kind of early on, and so the deck of cards is like 67 years old. And so we used the cards with the number of children, and then we'd pass out, if it was the children or the grandchildren, how many people there were. And then the high card, whatever, would get the first choice, and then you go through the number of people, and then you'd start at the bottom, and then that person would get to pick again of what they might do. And we did different things at different times. So I remember one was furniture, and it was all in an area together. And then another was all the dishes that, you know, we had. So making some of the family history, so I got the cards. So making that family history is important, and knowing that we have different options of how we distribute. And again, that whole idea of you can give it away now when you're still alive, or you can just leave it all for your loved ones to take care of later. The next slide shows us that to get started, we didn't get all that stuff in just one day. And as I walk through my house in my basement, I sometimes think about, oh my gosh. And when I do that, that helps me to remember if I'm out shopping, it's like whatever you take into the house is going to have to come out sometime. So I love to buy furniture. I love to refinish furniture, but I don't have room for it anymore. So you have to start small. And instead of eating the whole pie, take it one slice at a time. So maybe start with a drawer or start with a closet. Start with a small area and you'll feel good when you've got some of that accomplished. And we want to wish you good luck with that process, and know that there are some resources and things that you can tap to know where you can get more information. The next slide shows you the information about that website that Ruth talked about earlier, the personal finance, and what to do with all your household papers. The Grandma's Pie Plate we've got listed there from University of Minnesota. Marlene Strum was the key author. And this is a curriculum that's probably 20 years old that was updated in 2016. And so the information is still pretty basic. What the challenge is now is with the new millennials and Gen X and Y not wanting things, there are new businesses that are cropping up that will come in and clean out your house for you at a price for the most part. It's not that you're going to make money, but it's knowing what those options are. And then Kansas State Extension did a video with the information from Who Gets Grandma's Yellow Pie Plate. So if you Google it, it's about an hour in length. If you Google those kinds of sites, you'll find more information. On the next slide, we just want to share with you Jane, Ruth, and my emails. If you have some questions or want to get in touch with us, that's how you can find us. It's our names at wisc.edu. So kind of easy if you know how to spell our names. And then on the last slide, I think we just want to thank you for attending. Thanks for your time today. And if you have any questions of any of us, please feel free to email us. And know that our lifespan education is out there doing a lot of different topics and education, like Ruth had mentioned, aging mastery. We have powerful tools for caregivers, just a really good wealth of information for you as you move forward and become more chronologically gifted with all kinds of stuff. So until next time, this has been Jane, Karen, and Ruth, and thanks so much. Take care.